Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Dynamite Shirt Printing, Kyle Metz. What a guy. He came on as a sponsor, and my primary use for him is drop shipping. So what that means is that I don't got to buy inventory. I don't got to buy a bunch of t-shirts. Kyle handles it all. So it's ordered online, and then he prints it and ships it, and he handles everything. And it works out for both parties. If you're looking for something else like general screen printing, he handles that. He does embroidery. He does direct to garment, DTG, which means you can do one-offs, and there's no minimum on that. Kyle's been able to help a lot of businesses that I've been funneling to him just to get going and to, start up. I mean, you don't want to order 100 t-shirts when you're just coming out the gate. And Kyle can handle small orders, large orders. He can handle everything you need. That's Dynamite Shirt Printing, and it's dynamiteshirtprinting.com. Go check it out. My favorite skate shop in the Valley, 5anddimeeaston.com. You can shop online or in store. Their address is 140 Northampton Street, Easton, PA. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 11 to 7, Saturday, 10 to 7, and Sundays, 11 to 5. They carry clothing, shoes, boards, accessories, and more. You can get complete decks down there. They got grip. They got some local clothing down there as well. I know a couple guys that came on the show that they're now selling stuff in store, and they're exclusive to Fucked. They are doing so much for the independent skate community. They're doing so much for the DIY. They're doing a lot in the area with skateboarding, and I couldn't be prouder to have them as a sponsor. Their story is incredible, from starting it when they were 18 and then coming back later in life to opening up what the store is that they wanted. And the two guys down there are just incredible. I can't say enough good things about them. I love that they're a sponsor, and they really help out in the community. And if you skate or want to support them, please go check them out locally. It is 140 Northampton Street, Easton, PA. Online, it is 5anddimeeaston.com. Please go check them out. All Valley Rooter, Jared LaBarba, friend of the show, childhood friend, Never Again Studios official plumber. 24-hour emergency services. 610-762-1656. That's 610-762-1656. They charge by the job, not by the hour, and they are 100% fully insured. They have free estimates. They also do installation and repair. They have a list of things. I can't go over them all on here, but you can find them at allvalleyrouter.net. All of Jared's services are on there. It's a beautiful website. You can contact him through that website. You can find out how to do, emergency services. Where should I call? Who should I contact? You can get all that there at allvalleyrouter.net. Free estimates, fully insured. Jared LaBarba. Check him out. Never Again Radio. Episode, I have no clue what we're on or what we're doing. Welcome to Never Again Radio, man. How are you?
I am blessed and highly favored. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. We met at the Lehigh Valley Style Influential Men of the Year.
Yeah.
We'll get into that later. You had quite an interesting story. We got to kind of introduce ourselves a little bit, but then it was kind of sped up into the actual photo shoot and all that. So I wanted to bring you on to kind of go through your story. It's really motivational from what I understand from what's behind it and what you've built yourself into today. But where did you get started on everything that you're doing now, and where did your story begin? Because I know the bicycle's involved and all that, but where did all of this kind of start for you?
Ooh, interesting. I guess, this all started in terms of what I'm doing now for a career. It all started about 6 years ago, where I made a major decision in my life that I was going to cut off, basically the security of social acceptability and walk away from an $80,000 a year job, sell my car, and move out of the apartment. And in doing so, I completely let go of everything that I was holding on to that was my identity. Had no idea how I was going to pay my rent. Had no idea how things were going to work. All I knew was that life was too too precious to go through unhappy and unfulfilled. And in doing so, what I know now to be divine intervention, I became a massage therapist and grew a business like 1,000%.
What were you doing at your job? I mean, did you go to college for something specific, and then was it something that you kind of were, a course that you set out to go on? I know a lot of people, when I bring them in here, is, and how my parents were is, I grew up in an era where you're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to get a job, and you either were going to work in a factory, have a trade, or you were going to go to college, and going to college meant that you were going to have a career, and that's the only way you could get there. So, like, were you kind of, like, pushed in a direction of, when you were in high school, like, was it like, I wanted to major in this, or how did you end up in the career that you were in that you left?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working since I was 10 years old.
Doing what?
I mean, various different things. I started out just sweeping the floor at my stepdad's shop. He was a material tester.
Yeah.
He would test soil and concrete for various different construction sites in the Lehigh Valley. And, I was taught work ethic at a very, very early age.
Yeah.
And prior to that, so I'm not a farmer, but 5 generations before me were farmers, and I still have cousins to this day that still operate on our family farm.
That's crazy.
Yeah, in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. So I gained a lot of my work ethic from the farm, and to answer your question, no, I had no real direction in life. I just kind of meandered through life with no real purpose, no real direction. I did try college. I majored in Adderall and girls.
Yep. Where did you go to college at?
I went to college at Penn Tech.
Yeah.
Williamsport, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think a buddy of mine went there.
Yeah, it's a lot of dudes.
Yeah. I think actually, because what is it for? It's for, is it for like design and architecture, or what's Penn Tech for?
So Penn Tech started out as a trade school, right?
Yeah.
So masonry, welding, heavy equipment mechanic. And then I think it's really evolved over the years. It was Williamsport Area Community College. Now it's affiliated with Penn State. I specifically went there for civil engineering, but I am nothing close to a civil engineer.
Yeah.
I made it 2 years though.
Yeah. I mean, high school was rough for me, and then I didn't really have direction on what I wanted to do. I think I wanted to do computers at the time, but math was always a problem for me. So that always ended up in like the back end of like developing and all that. Mm-hmm. And, you said Adderall. I was the poster child for Ritalin. Yeah. So I was before Adderall, but I kind of ran into the similar roadblocks, which is why I thought there'd be a lot to comb through with this today. But so when you say that you got into Adderall and girls, that was kind of like all that was really going on, and you weren't really paying attention, because mine was booze, and like I just didn't. It turned to a point where I was just like, I'm done with this shit.
Well, here's the thing, right? So I grew up around a ton of adversity, right? I mean, I experienced more trauma and more real life events than I think anybody ever should.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was my life. It was just arrests and drug addiction and violence and abuse, verbal abuse, and that was just normal life. But the thing of it is I never addressed those traumas. I never addressed my childhood. I never addressed certain questions. And then I was just kind of thrown into this thing called college because like you said, that's just what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
But I really had no real reason why I was there other than it was the next thing to do.
Yeah, that's how I always felt in high school. Is I felt I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I feel like there wasn't enough things that, I went to Nazareth. I went over to Nazareth because my buddy's kid plays basketball over there. Like, they have a TV production set up now.
Nice.
Like, it's like a full newsroom. And I'm like, man, like, if I would have had something that would have remotely triggered anything outside of books and paper. You know, I look at my life now and like I figured out like how to learn, and all that is very visual for me. So I can sit here and I can listen to a podcast on business, and listening to it or watching it is how I will comprehend it. My reading comprehension, because of my distractions, is just constantly rereading the same sentence.
Correct.
And then my mind will go. So like I look back at like how underdeveloped the school system was at the time, and then now how there is way more things where like, you know, you can go to high school now and then go start working the morning news program and then realize that that's what you want to get into, and then go to a college for that. I feel like when I grew up, there wasn't anything like that. And the generation that I believe was coming up with me, it's like you had people whose parents went to college and then that's what they went for. My mom was a nurse and went to nursing school, and my father went to Vietnam and then he was a factory worker. So like that was kind of like, I was always like, my dad was like, do not work in a factory. He's like, it's not bad work, but you should be doing something else. And then like, that was really the only guidance I had. And then like everything I did always was, hey, you have to have this so much academics in order to get over here. Like say I wanted to go for psychology. So I remember going to NACYAC and being like, man, I really like psychology, but they're like, you need to do English, math, science, and then you can then go over here and do what you want. And that was always my hurdles, is I couldn't get past the comprehension in order to learn the academics, in order to get to the actual thing I want, where now I feel like they cut a lot of that out and you can just go do something. Or you can start something on your own like this, and that's normal. Where when we were coming up, it wasn't normal to find your own lane.
Well, I think you have to take into consideration the infrastructure of society at that time frame. You know, that was, you know, we were coming out of the industrial age, right? So the education system was created to produce worker bees, right? You know, and it wasn't designed to produce entrepreneurs or people that think outside the box. You go to school, you're there from X amount of time, you eat lunch at this time, right? You know, if you get out of line or you question authority, you get reprimanded, right? And it was, you know, it was designed to have that mindset. And also the other thing is the education system, I believe, you know, and I think it's making leaps and bounds now, but it was a teacher in front of a classroom that you read books and then you answered questions, and then you were supposed to regurgitate that information during test time, right?
Yeah.
Well, not everybody learns like that. There's audio, kinesthetic, and there's visual learners, right? Me personally, I'm audio and kinesthetic. I have to do it in order to receive it.
I learned that from just working jobs. Yeah,
exactly. And I'd like to believe that the education system is upgrading their technology. But in the 90s, no, it was
computers.
Yeah.
Like we were just getting computers.
Do you remember Oregon Trail?
Yeah. That was like, it was Oregon Trail and Sim City were like used as like, basic learners. But I mean, this is when I remember taking a typing class, not even a typing class, but like it was a computer class where like they were impressed that like the computer teacher was able to make the computer say hello. And like that was like such an early on thing. And then I saw it develop into where, remember getting the AOL discs in the mail, and like that was the first time online, and you would buy a gateway computer, it would come with Encarta, and then you had your first visual libraries, and like that's so different than like now where I see my friends' kids like learning. You know, if I say, hey, Violet, can you make me a coffee? And she just goes to YouTube and then pulls up a thing. And then in 5 minutes, she's making like the leaps and bounds on like how you can learn visually is it's incredible. And it's really driven my business twice as far as it normally would, just from, you know, getting into Audible. And then like now I'm listening to a lot of business books where like I don't have the time to sit down and what it would take me to start a book from cover to finish. Like now I can like I be on the treadmill. Now I'm listening on the treadmill, then I'm listening to the book on the way home. Yeah. If nobody's down here, it's like, you know, you came down, it's either music or, you know, Audible or podcasting going on. It's just nonstop, There's just the technology is endless.
Yeah, fast is the new big, and the ability to get information out to people has changed dramatically over the last 20 years.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. But it's the same principles, right? So prior to internet age or the height maturity of internet, it was newspapers, commercials, right?
Yeah.
And radio.
Yeah.
Now it's podcast, YouTube, and blogs.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same principles. We still receive information. It's just that more and more people have access to those channels.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So where was your direction when college wasn't really working out for you on the second year? Like at that point, were you working full time? Were you just kind of trying to get through college? Like where was your life at?
I was 20. Oh boy, that was a bad time in my life. I was 20 years old when I failed out of college. I had like a 1.7 GPA, and I was pretty indulged in the extracurricular activities of alcohol and Adderall and things that we do in college. And I failed out. At that point, I had lost my license for 22 years. Was
that for like multiple offenses with driving or?
Yeah. So, basically, like I said, I faced a lot of adversity. I saw a lot of adversity as a young kid, and I turned to drugs and alcohol at an early age of 12 years old.
Yeah, same.
I was smoking blunts and drinking oldie 40s.
It's crazy looking back on it. Like I look at how young my friends' kids are at between 13 and 15. And then I started smoking cigarettes when I was 13. And then I probably started drinking that year too. And then I look at my friends' kids and then I'm like, that's probably the biggest thing that ever tripped me out was seeing how young and innocent and how I shouldn't have been doing any of that at 13. And then I start looking at what my mom had to put up with from that point up until me getting my shit together at 28. But I mean, that's so young to start dicking around with stupid stuff.
Yeah. I look at kids.
It's wild now looking back and being because sometimes my friends will be like, oh man, my kid's doing this and that. And I'm like, hey, just be glad he's not doing this, this, and this. And then, I kind of give him perspective on it could be way worse if it's just some behavioral issue in class other than, being addicted to drugs when you don't know what being addicted to drugs is and going through withdrawal and not understanding what withdrawal is and then, being super wild and my parents not even understanding where this is all coming from. Meanwhile, I'm hungover, going through withdrawal. I'm going through all these different things as a child who's supposed to be going through puberty. So it's kind of a recipe for complete disaster. So at this point, when you were in college, did you have your license taken away at that time, or was it during college was kind of the final nail in the coffin for not being able to drive?
Nah, bro. I got my first DUI when I was 15 years old. Yeah. I stole a car and got her pulled over for driving without a license and driving under DUI, under the influence. And I never got it. I never got my license.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. So by the time I was in college, I had 3 DUIs and 7 underage drinking charges.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I was a wild man.
Yeah.
I just, I didn't care. And I didn't care about life. I didn't care about yours or mine. I had no regard for the law or anything like that. And so I had never got it. So here I am, 20 years old. I had lost my license for 22 years and I failed out of college. I really had no direction in life. I didn't really know where I was going. And I just got a landscaping job. Shout out to Mike Jones. I got a landscaping job and, I just sit on a mower and, like I said, no real direction, no real, ambitions, nothing. I just kind of existed.
How long did you do landscaping for?
A couple of years, like 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, that'll change your perspective on some things.
It will. Yeah, I mean, listen, there's something to be said about good, honest, hard work.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about good, honest, hard work. It teaches you something. It teaches you something that It teaches you character. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you how to show up. We had to start at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Yeah, 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to be at this gas station in the truck, ready to go to the cemeteries to start cutting grass. And at that time, I wasn't mentally stable due to the Adderall, and I don't know, something about waking up really early and just watching the sunrise come up. Cutting grass, the smell of the fresh cut grass, and it just, I don't know, it calmed me down.
Yeah, I did tree work for 2 years. So we worked directly with a landscaping company, but there was just something like what you said. It was just about getting up, putting your boots on, and that kind of work, you're kind of left with your thoughts a lot all day. Mm-hmm. And whether you're riding a mower or you're in the truck, I mean, I worked with my best friend, and I actually I don't know what would have happened. I left the job because it was, the winter. It wasn't, you didn't keep working. And then if you didn't have enough hours to collect or your boss didn't do things like that, it became really tough to get through winter. But I didn't mind the hard work. And like we kind of came up in similar, like that working class background, all of my brothers always worked. We always worked. We always had chores to do. So it was always just that work ethic of like, even now it's like I took off for the holiday, and after I stopped working a couple days, like I just start getting all weird, and I'm like, man, like I gotta, and then like it'll build up, and then I'm like, I'm going for a 9-mile jog, and then I'm just like, I get crazy. So like, that work ethic and not ever stopping working, like it's really built in, but that kind of matches up when you're doing hard work like that. And then I think you start changing because it's almost like you're doing exercise all day. So it's like you kind of come home from being exhausted and like that work, and then you start working around different types of people. Like, when do you think that you kind of started waking up a little bit, where the point where you were like, man, like I kind of got to get a grasp on my life?
In order to answer that question, I got to give you the full, the full carousel here. So, grew up without a father, right? Father was removed from my life when I was 9 months. And we moved to a small town, very close to here. And I thought I had a normal life, right? I thought I had all the materialistic things that anybody could ever want. I played football, basketball, wrestling, football, baseball, wrestling. We had a dog. It was like Anytown, USA. I thought everything was cool. I had a stepdad. We went on vacations. Things were cool, right? I had a bicycle. We had Christmases, life was pretty good. And then I realized something, my whole life changed dramatically when I was 12 years old. When I was 12 years old, I come home from wrestling practice, and the state police detectives have my whole house surrounded, right? And I'm standing on the sidewalk. I'm confused. I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. And I see my mother get carried out in handcuffs. My mother was being arrested for running a prostitution ring. Right? And my whole life got flipped upside down, dude. I had no idea what was going on. Why did you do this to me? Went to school. All the kids made fun of me. 7th grade can be a nasty place for something like that happens like that, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's when a lot of bullshit starts, the 7th grade.
Yeah. So, faced a lot of adversity. And like I said, I turned to drugs and alcohol at an early age, 12 years old, to kind of deal with the feelings, to try to, and the other thing about, mental health and facing adversity in the 90s, or at least in my family, things happened and you just didn't talk about them. You just kind of like, this didn't happen. So I was never, able to really process the events in my life. I mean, my house was raided. When I was 15 years old, my sister turned our house into a whole crack house, right? I saw sex, drugs, violence. And then one day, my 3-year-old niece comes up to me while I'm sitting on the couch, and he said, something's wrong with mommy. And I go to the bathroom and I knock on the door, and there's no response. So I kick open the door, boom. And there's my sister, blue in the face, unresponsive on the bathroom floor. And I gave her CPR and I resuscitated her, and I was able to save her life that day. And I made a promise to myself that day that I would never touch certain substances as a result of what I just saw. So, I failed. I got kicked out of high school. I was labeled the bad kid. I'm 20 years old. I lost my license for 22 years. I have no direction in life. I have no idea where I'm going. I blamed all my outside circumstances as to why I keep ending up in the same place, right? It's the cop's fault. It's this town's fault. It's my mom's fault. It's everybody else's fault but mine, not willing to take accountability for my actions. And I get a great idea. I know what the answer is. It's to move to Philadelphia, right? If I can just get a new start, new location, new people, everything will be okay. So I was an ironworker welder, right? Big ego, 6 foot tall. I climb up tall and cut things down. And I'm at work and I get something in my eye and I'm prescribed prescription pain medication, right? And I realized, I put a lot of emphasis on work ethic. 30 days later, I was completely addicted. 90 days later, I have a full-blown expensive habit and I'm buying heroin in North Philadelphia in one of the largest open-air drug markets in the world. 6 months later, I had lost everything. The girl, the car, the job, the apartment, everything was gone. And I ended up being a homeless heroin addict in North Philadelphia, standing in the middle of the street selling bottles of water for $1 a piece. I was 50 pounds less than I am right now. I was malnourished. I was dehydrated. I was a shell of a man. And I would stand in the middle of the street and sell bottles of water for $1 a piece. I defecated on the public sidewalk in front of people. I was hopeless and homeless. And one day I made it back home and my mom walked in on me about to stick a needle in my arm. And the pain in her eyes was more than I could handle. And I dropped to my knees and, brother, I prayed like I've never prayed before in my life. And it was the most humble prayer that I've ever said. And it was just, please help me. And in that moment, I began to make a change in my life. It was gradual. I had to rebuild myself to the man that's sitting here now. But I made a real decision that day that I want more for my life. And I began to change. I got some materialistic things back into my life. I was an ironworker welder. I did maintenance mechanic stuff. I was blue collar and I was making like 80 grand a year. Right. So I went from being a homeless heroin addict to making $80,000 a year. Right. It's like you hit the lotto. This is like whatever, this is it. Yeah. Right. I was living up I was living in Nazareth. I was living right.
Well, I was going to ask when you came back from Philly to see your mom, were you back in the Valley?
Yeah. I came back to the Valley. I ran from the Valley to Philadelphia running from the Valley. And then I ran back here running from Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works.
So I'm just running the whole time, right? I'm just running. And, and I moved back to the Valley. I'm 27 years old. I'm living in the same room that I grew up in. And, and I made a change. And I got a job and I got a girlfriend. I got all the social acceptability stuff that I thought, was supposed to make me happy, right? So I'm making 80 grand a year. I'm bringing home huge checks. We got a 2-bedroom apartment right down the street in Nazareth. Got a girlfriend. She's pretty. She's cute. She's down to do whatever. I'm driving without a license, so I still have an automobile, and I'm ready to put a bullet in my brain, dude. How could I have all these things and be so unhappy, right? And I realized that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So I think so many times we're running around chasing things that we necessarily don't even want. And we don't know that we don't want them until we have them. And I did the craziest thing I've ever done in my entire life. I walked away from the security of working for someone else. Told the girl she's got to go. Told the landlord I got to go. And I sold my car after driving without a license for 9.5 years. And I started riding a bicycle. I moved into a boarding house in Allentown next to a 70-year-old guy who had killed 2 people. His name was Frank. He was a gangster, dude. And all I had was a bag of clothes and a bicycle. And that's a great place to be.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack with all of this. When you go back to your mother getting arrested, how long did it take before she was back and it kind of seemed like a regular household, or was it never really something that was kind of back to something that you know, I understand where the wild stuff's coming from, but I mean, was the household never the same, and then it just kind of like grew into your sister bringing more bullshit in, or was your mom around at the time? Like, was she back in the house eventually?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my mom, here's a funny story, right? Or a crazy story. So after years of self-development, after years of unpacking all that stuff, I realized that my mom was just doing the best that she knew how.
Yeah.
Right? So many times we hold resentments with our parents as a result of the way that they brought us up. They're just doing the best that they know how. And I'm just doing the best that I know how. And you're doing the best that you know how.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't blame my mom. For 20 years I did. And I realized that she was just doing the best she knew how.
It's a lot to hold on to, too.
Oh, yeah, it was. I mean, that's why I turned to drugs and alcohol for so many years, right?
You had to shut it off.
Yeah, because I never dealt with that, right?
Yeah.
Here's the beauty part. My mom, she gets in trouble in 1997 in a small town where everyone knew what was going on, right? And she never ran. She stayed in the same business underneath the same name and did the same type of work. And it was just her. She got rid of all those people. She's stuck in there, right? 3 years later, 3 years after she got busted, I come home from practice and she says, Wes, I want you to meet somebody. So I go into the business. I sit at the front desk. I look to my left, and there's Donovan McNabb, the head quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. My mom went on to be the head massage therapist for the Philadelphia Eagles from 2000 to 2012, 3 years after she was arrested for running a prostitution ring.
That's wild.
It's so crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know if it was, listen, it was a household, right? You know, it wasn't good, bad. It was just, it is what it is, right? I don't have to put a meaning on things. I survived. I had clothes on my back. I had food in my belly. You know, I was loved, right? Yeah, I saw some chaotic stuff, but you know what? It made me the person that I am today. So I'm not mad at it.
Yeah. No, I grew up with 3 brothers. You know, my dad had health issues, and, you know, I've gone to therapy since I've been 28. I'm 42, so like I haven't stopped going to therapy. I love therapy. It's like I love like I try and explain to my friends like I'm building tools in the sense of like people don't understand like when you get into a situation and then you know, and I'm sure you've developed a ton of stuff over the years where you know how to cope with life. So like it's way easier to like. It's not even getting help. It's somebody teaching you how to help yourself. And then because when you get into that shit, you're usually by yourself, or like when you're left with your thoughts, and then you know, so, you know, I kind of get where you're coming from in just kind of growing up in like absolute chaos. And then like, you know, you kind of start looking at your parents when you get older, and it is that it's like, they're just trying to do the best that they can in the situation. And then it's like, I look at my mom and like, you know, we went from having 2 full incomes to 1, and then 1 income having to do that. And then I look back and like my life never really changed. And that was because my mom continued to work and continued to like, you know, go into debt and do all these things so that my life wouldn't seem any different than somebody else's because of like the, you know, where we were at in, you know, the neighborhood we lived in, and like they wanted us to get the right gifts that we wanted. And then it became something that, you know, my life looking back on it was like, it was nuts growing up the way we did. But then in the same aspect, it's made me who I am. It's made me at a younger age start dealing with adversity. I was just too young to realize that. And then like where I'm at now, I can really only attribute from going through the shit I went through. Because it's like, I know people who all their friends are alive and they went to college, and then like I kind of look at them sometimes and I'm like, well, I don't know if you're enjoying life.
Right.
And then it's just like you get into these positions, and you know, I tried to not run away, but like I remember moving the first time, and it's nuts. Like I tried getting away from this town like 3 times, and then I gave up and was like, I don't care. I'm just going to stay in Nazareth. And that's why with like the next things that I'm doing with the restaurant and shit, like it's for Nazareth, because like I've been here for too long, and I'm like, I'm tired of waiting for somebody else to do it. But now I'm at a full 360 where like I'm revitalizing and trying to help the town from going from wanting to get the fuck out of here. So I related on a sense of leaving and doing all that. When you were in Philly, what was that like? Because I'm sure it was a whirlwind, or like, what was that like to kind of watch yourself completely get into that situation? Was it something that just happened and then one day you get up and you're like, fuck man, I'm selling water bottles? Or like, was it like this slow progression where you're like, hey man, we're going too deep, and then you're hooked? Because I've lost a lot of friends to heroin, and I've lost a lot of friends to drugs and stupid shit. And you know, I've been there where like, you know, I'm hanging out with my buddy and he's nodding out and I'm just like, hey, what's up, man? I'm just tired. Yeah. And then like he didn't want to be in the situation he was in, and he got in it and got himself out, and then eventually overdosed. But like when you watch somebody go through that, what's it like to be in the middle of that shitstorm? Because now this is totally different than something someone create, you know, because when you're talking about you're putting the blame on everybody else, but like now when you're in Philly, like that's got to be weird to look at, because now that's you. Like you're the reason you're in this fucking mess. So like, what was that like to go through, because you didn't have anybody else to blame?
Yeah, man. And it was a slow, steady downhill progression.
I'm sure.
That got accelerated with the use of opioids.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I couldn't see it then, but I could see it now. So our life is a sum total of all of our decisions throughout our entire life. Your life is a reflection of the decisions that you make, the people that you surround yourself, and the books that you read. Okay? Or observe. So, you know, I was a maniac, dude. I was a maniac before Philly.
Yeah.
I'm a wild dude. I'm very intense. You know, I was the kid that would do a backflip off a 40-foot, you know, trestle, right? Like I was that kid. You know, I didn't care. I was just a wild man. And heroin kicked my ass.
Not many people come back from it.
Brother, like, yo, it's not even heroin anymore. It's straight fentanyl.
Yeah.
There's a drug called fentanyl. It's 100 times more potent than morphine. And it's killing people at an astronomical rate. 107,000 people last year alone dead as a result of fentanyl. And, you know, it's being mass produced in China. It's being brought into the country by way of South America. And it's being pressed into your everyday pills. So codeines, you know, Adderall, Xanax, these are all they're pressed fentanyl pills, and they're killing people at an astronomical rate. You know, but to answer your question, no, it was a slow progression, and you're right. There was no one else to blame but me. You know, I came to that realization, right? And, you know, if I got myself into this situation, then I have to be a part of the solution to get myself out.
Yeah. What was the first step to getting out?
Admitting that there was a problem.
Yeah. Well, did you start going through treatment or whatever you decided to do in Philadelphia, or did you do it when you moved back to the Valley?
When I moved back to the Valley, I got some help. Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier. Well, for me, it was easier to come home. And then, you know, like I hit my rock bottom. I was in Virginia I think I was sober at the time. I was. And then it just, a lot of stuff built up to a point where I was looking at suicide. And I checked myself into a hospital. And this is just a short version. And my parents had to come down and get me. And then when I came home, I didn't know what I was going to do. And my therapist at the time, like, I wanted to check into a facility. And my therapist was like, hey, like, just know that if you get checked in, you might not be able to get checked out. And then that stuck with me. And then she was like, I think we can get through this. I don't think you're at a position that you think that you're at, but, you know, we can start working on this. But there was something about being back at home, being back in my room growing up that I kind of felt like I had, it didn't feel like a second chance, but it felt like I was able to tackle the issue because I was home, as opposed to not being home because it felt so foreign to be away. Because like when I moved, I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't drinking at the time, so like it's not easy to make friends. And then if you start going to meetings and stuff, it's like that becomes wishy-washy on like how far along the person really is, or so it was like I had a girlfriend at the time, and that was about it. And I had some coworkers, so it felt very alone.
Yes.
So to come back and then have my parents, which they didn't know what to do, because it's not like they've dealt with this shit before. They have 3 kids, but my brothers weren't at this point in life. My brothers didn't, my one brother, we were doing drugs together a lot when we were younger, and he got his shit straight way before I did. So it was kind of like, it was just something I had to deal with. But being back home kind of lessened the blow, as it was more or less like I had an opportunity to kind of like, I knew I was okay there. I had a shelter, I had food. Like, it was just kind of like the starting point of like building back up to, where I'm at now. So was it easier being home?
I don't know if it was easier or harder, because it's the only experience I have is getting clean in this area.
Yeah.
I guess if I take a look at it, there are certain things about the Lehigh Valley that are comfortable, right? And I guess that helps, because when you go from a life of complete degradation and destruction, right? And then you enter into this new world of productivity and living a clean life, that's a pretty big jump. It's a new world. And it's scary. It's frightening. You don't know how. You got to relearn how to operate all over again. It's weird. It is weird. It's like, how do I maneuver through this thing called life without the use of a substance, right? And that's that's a foreign thing. So that's uncomfortable enough.
Yeah.
So I guess it would be easier, because at least I had, the comfort of some familiarity in the presence of such a drastic change.
Yeah. And I think you hit it right on the head with that, is kind of what I was trying to describe, because I remember 2 of my friends reached out to me because I didn't tell anybody why I was back home or what had happened. I think maybe 2 or 3 people knew at the time what was going on. So to have 2 friends who were totally out of the loop and were just like these blue collar guys, that kind of made it easier. It was more familiar to be like, oh, I know these 2 guys. I trust these 2 guys. They're super low key. We're just going to play video games. Like, it was just kind of like, there was a comfortable area, because everything else is so uncomfortable to do anything at that point. Yeah. So now you kind of get your shit back on track, and then when I call it like kind of dumping the shoebox out. Now you're in this facility, or not, the living situation with Frank, and like, where are you at with that, with the bike? Like, so we're kind of sped up to there now.
Yeah. So I made a decision to completely surrender everything that I was holding on to, and I always explain.
And you were sober at the time, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always explain it like this. Remember when you're a kid on the playground and you're on the monkey bars? You can't go on to the next monkey bar until you let go of the one you're on.
Yeah.
Right? And that's true in life. If you want to go to the next level, if you want something different, if you want to change, you have to let go of what you're holding on to in order to go there. right? You can't become who you want to become and stay the person that you are. And that's what I had to do. And it's a scary thing. You have no idea. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of faith. And the parachute will eventually open. It will. So yeah, I'm in a room for rent house, right? Where a bunch of guys renting rooms, and I'm in a double room with Frank, and I'm riding a bicycle, right? I'm in Allentown. And this guy, my buddy, said, you can come walk my dogs for $20 a day or something, right? So I would ride my bike from the west side of Allentown by the fairgrounds all the way over to the south side of Allentown. It's like a mile or something. And I'll never forget, I'm riding this bike. I'm taking the bus, and I'm 30 years old, and everything in my mind is saying, yo, bro, they are laughing at you. To this day, I don't know who they are.
It's weird when you do that. I feel like not enough people talk about that, where I'll be talking to people sometimes, and I'll be like, yeah, well, they think this, they think that. And my buddies will be like, who?
Yeah, who's they?
And then I'll be like, well, like the people that wouldn't want to buy my T-shirts would say that. And then they're like, but did anyone say it? And I'll just be like, no. It's weird. It's weird because like a lot of people hold on to that shit. A lot of people become miserable and angry every day, and they think that there's somebody. I mean, it's definitely escalated with comments on Instagram and social media, but like in a sense of like thinking, that it's almost like, because it's your inner. What is it? Would be your inner fears, your inner insecurities, your inner things in life that are telling you that you're still the same guy that was, fucked up in Philly, even though you are light years away from that person.
It's your inner child. It's your inner child. That's what it is. It's your subconscious mind. It's the voice that, tries to keep you safe, right? It's the voice in your mind that, tells you things that aren't true, and then we believe them as true, right? The truth of the matter is, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares whether I'm riding a bike. Nobody cares. It's the self-limiting belief system that I have about myself and my potential. That's that voice.
Yeah.
Right. So on certain days, it can be louder than others. But my job is to be aware of it and to recognize that it's not true. So I'm riding a bike. I'm walking these dogs, right? I have no idea what I'm going to do. So many times we attach our identity to our occupation, and that's a dangerous, slippery slope, because that occupation could be taken from you. We've seen that in COVID, right? It's not linked with your purpose. Okay. So I would walk these dogs for $10 a day, and I would just show up, and it was my purpose in life was to walk these dogs from my buddy who was driving truck. And through walking those dogs, divine intervention came down and said, I want you to go help your mom. Help my mom? I'm a 6 foot tall, 220 pound ironworker welder filled with ego, right? I'm a construction worker. You want me to go rub dudes' backs and be a massage therapist? Yeah, go help your mom. I don't have a license. Go help your mom. How am I going to do this? Go help your mom. So on a bicycle, here I come. I go to school. I become a massage therapist. And that same business that my mom got arrested in 1997, even though she had worked on the Philadelphia Eagles and did all these amazing things, certain people still remembered the reputation of 1997. It takes 20 years to build a good reputation. It takes 5 seconds to lose it. And so I show up, no business experience whatsoever. You and I were just talking about everything I learned in business. I learned by making mistakes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. And I learned on the fly. I woke up earlier. I researched successful people. I started listening to motivational speakers. I wrote my goals down every day. I carried around a little book with me, a little to-do list, and I just kept chopping away at the tree, bro. Riding a bicycle and rebranded, brought in technology, changed the name, put a new facade. I took massive action. Massive action is the cure-all to all fear. So if you don't know what to do, just do something, and you will figure it out along the way. Use the law of horizon. You go as far as you can see, and then you can see a little bit more.
It's crazy you describe it that way, because I never really been able to put like a name of like how I've worked and how I've built everything, and it's exactly that way. I mean, when I was at a point where I didn't know what to fucking do, I just started working. And then it's like when I started working, then I just started having fulfillment, and money's never really been a thing that I've chased after, because I was always just trying to find answers for things. And when you start like we said, like building with the horizon, it's like you just keep going. And then when you get to that place, my therapist always says I move the finish line. So like I'm never really finished. I just keep moving the finish line. And then it just was learning through mistakes. And like now it's like turning it into a business and becoming more professional. It's like, when people start talking about your time and what it's worth and all that, is like, what I've realized is like, well, you're going to pay me so you don't have to make those 100 mistakes that took me twice the amount of time to get here. But everything I've learned is because I did it wrong. Mm-hmm. Like I remember somebody coming down here and they were like, man, you got all this stuff, man, you're so successful. And I said to her, I go, I'm the least successful person I know. And she's like, well, man, she's like, you gotta feel so good that you've accomplished this much stuff. And I'm like, well, to me, I've accomplished nothing. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, this has been absolute failure up until like the last year as to when this started kind of working. Yeah. But like everything I've learned through business, operating this, audio, video, everything that you see here is completely learned from fucking up. Nonstop, always over and over and over and over. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember when we started this, like when we were talking in the beginning, it's like no one even knew what we were doing. I was the only one that was kind of like, hey, I think we can make enough money off of this to pay everybody. But I mean, I look at it now where like I'm getting to that point next year. Like that took 7 years. Yeah. But I had 6 or 7 into the business before that. So it was like, it started as apparel, then it went into podcasting. Then from podcasting, it went into, food, and then food's now going into a restaurant. And then it's like, now I can, like, it's funny because everyone's always like, it'll take 10, 20, like what you said, it'll take 20 years to build up a reputation. It's like, it does, because you just don't get the reputation immediately. It's all the hard work, it's all the sacrifice, it's all the mistakes, and then when that's rounded out into one thing and you're like, man, what the fuck just ran me over, it's like you kind of have your answers to how everything should be laid out. Yeah. It's not easy at all. And then to not have a car on top of it, I remember when I lived in Virginia, I rode a bike because it was what I did in the city, because it's Virginia. And then I was in Richmond. But when you come back here, I was like, oh, I'll ride my bike somewhere. And I'm like, nah, it's totally different than a city mile. Like, we're now in the backwoods. Yeah, I'm like, bro. I remember I rode my bike from Bushkill to Nazareth, and I was like, oh, 15 minutes. And then I get to a hill, and I'm like, it took 40. Yeah. So it's like, to not have the resources and to keep building the way you did, it's pretty remarkable, because I know how hard it must have been with the addictions and all that. And then like, I know what it's like to get your shit in check, you know, and it takes a while to do that, but building a business during that time or being focused on something does help. But it gets to a point where you still got to deal with both eventually. So it's like you could run a parallel line where it's like, all right, well, this is healthy because I'm getting sober, and making T-shirts is a really good distraction. But then, you run that gauntlet for a while, and it's like, all right, well, you got to go left, and you got to get your shit together, and then you got to go right, and you got to get your business together. And then, so it's two separate things that eventually come from it. So, I mean, when I look at my situation, and I always thought it was crazy to not have a fucking car. Like, that's a big fucking problem.
Dog, it was insane, bro. And it was threefold, right? So I'm building a retail massage business, right? That is 95% predominantly female,
Yeah.
Right. So I got, the thoughts of that, right? What are they going to think? Everybody thinks I'm jerking dudes off, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm simultaneously growing a network marketing business. So I grew 2 businesses at the exact same time.
Where did the idea for the network marketing come from? Just the time?
When you start vibrating at a certain level, and, when you're young in entrepreneurialism, you're at all these networking things and you're, rubbing shoulders with different people and everybody's trying to put an opportunity. When people understand that you're a go-getter and you're a hustler and you're going to do whatever it takes, they start throwing opportunities in front of you. So somebody is like, he throws this electric opportunity. It's called Stream Energy, right? At the time it was Stream Energy. And he's like, I don't know how this works, but you can get free electric. I didn't even have an electric bill.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know. Let's try it, right? And there was a guy. He was pretty big in it, and his name's George. And I remember he looked at my outside circumstances. Okay, this kid doesn't drive. He's a former heroin addict, and he's going to be a dud. He's not going to be a producer, right? Well, that's like the last thing you want to say to me, because I will do things just in spite of, right? And I took that energy and I went to the top 1% of the entire company in 9 months, while growing a massage business, while getting my shit together, all while riding a bicycle. It was insane, dude. It was crazy. I would come home 9:00 at night, hands swollen, right? Barely enough energy to get up the stairs to kiss my stepdaughter on the cheek to go say goodnight. And I would wake up at 5:00 in the morning with bloodshot eyes from the stress the day before. And here's the thing about success, and this is why you're successful. You don't fucking stop. You don't quit. No matter what, you keep moving forward. You keep pedaling. You put your head down and you keep pedaling. That's how you become successful. That's how you get to where you get. And here's the beauty part. 8 years later, you wake up and you got this successful podcast, or you got this successful business, or you got whatever result that you were going after. And that's not the beauty part. The beauty part is I became a different person. You became a different person. You grew with all those mistakes. I grew with all those times where I wanted to quit, where I was crying, where I'm breaking down. This is hard. Why do I got to go through this? Motherfucker, I'm a different person.
Yeah. It's weird because you don't realize it when you're going through it. And then I remember a couple of my friends would be like, do you realize how much you've changed?
Yes.
And I was just like, what? And they're like, dude, you were a total fucking drunk. They're like, you were funny and didn't do dumb shit, but they're like, your entire life just revolved around getting fucked up. And then, years later in therapy, you find out where like the core reason is from, where you're running from. And it's usually something stemmed from something that happened growing up. And then it's just kind of like, that's the way I went to deal with shit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then when you stop doing that after it becomes a massive fucking problem, I'm too busy not being that to look at what I've actually become. And then it's weird because I don't really even have moments anymore. The Lehigh Valley style thing hit me weird.
Yeah.
Like that was because we all talked about like getting that call and not understanding. Like everyone there was like, "What? Like I'm not supposed to be here." So it was like,
nah, I was supposed to be there.
So it's like, like when everybody was like kind of talking about it, like to me it was like, man, you've come so fucking far. And it's like sometimes I don't stop and look at like how far I've actually come. And then like when they reached out about that, like I kind of had a moment, and like what's cool is like my mom doesn't understand any of this shit. But my brother's been in the paper. All my brothers are very successful they've all like have decorated credits to what they do. So for me, it was more or less like I finally had something that I could be like, this is what I'm doing. And then like the reaction from my mom and dad from that were like something that I'll hold for forever. Like they're like, I never could do, in my eyes, I couldn't ever get to a point where I thought they'd be proud enough. So it's like to get that level of something from Lehigh Valley style, which people look at it in many different ways, but like for me, like that was enough to hand them something as proof as to what I did. But sometimes it's hard for me to look at the proof. So it's like when I had that moment and like met everybody there and everybody was just so awesome and like the photo shoot was really cool and the photographer was great. Like I remember leaving that day and being like, man, that was fucking cool. But like That is so drastic from the 13-year-old kid who's drinking fucking Zimas at my parents' Mad
Dog 2020.
Yeah, you know, it's like
Zimas.
it's like when I'm at a family reunion and I remember my cousin telling on me for drinking, but like, and me being so upset at her, and then like, you know, getting into my, you know, 18 to 20 and getting super wild, and then being to a point where like alcohol was just the least stupid thing I was doing, and then it was all in on that, and then like to watch the progression of that and how I started the business, and then sometimes it's like I forget that I don't, like, this is my job. Like I told you, like leaving the post office and all that shit, like, you know, that's a long time ago that I did that, and I'm just like, man, so like sometimes it's hard to actually see how much you actually change, because like what you said, it's go, don't stop. So it's like, I don't know. I knew this would run parallel in a lot of different senses. So at what point do you see an extreme change in the massage therapy where like the things that you're doing is working? Because that's got to be like your new fix, where it's like, you know, you start seeing your income changing, you start seeing the business change. Now you see that the reputation has changed. So what was that like to get completely engulfed in almost the addiction of
Success.
rebranding?
Yeah.
I know that like it's something that you can get really, and it's not a bad thing, but like it can become something that you really go after constantly.
Yeah, man, it was kind of like a new drug. It definitely was.
That you don't got to feel bad about.
No, but you got to be careful of. You got to be careful of, because, like I said, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
Yeah.
You know, I see a lot of people, you know, people that we idolize. Look at this dude that was on the Ellen DeGeneres show, right? Stitch or something.
I know the story.
Yeah, dude was like the DJ for Ellen.
Yeah.
Really big social media guy, you know, decided that there was no way out, you know. I know what that feels, right? To have all these eyes looking at you as you're successful, but deep inside you're dying inside, right? And but you know, so it is a slippery. You have to be careful. You have to put things in their proper place and understand what matters in life. But you know, it was an interesting journey, and it still is. I think the first time that I really realized, you know, that okay, I'm doing this thing, right? Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I went from not believing that I could do it to, okay, we have some evidence, was I put a new facade on the building, right? There was a program with the township. They paid for 50% of anything I did to the front of the building to increase the curb value of the town. So new paint, you know, new signage, new website, you know, it's beautiful. Me and my mom were power struggling. We're knocking heads, right? For like the umpteenth time. And it's 9 o'clock at night. We're both tired. We just worked 10 hours, right? She's locking up the door. I'm getting into my Uber. It's 9 o'clock at night. I can't stand her right now. I turn around. I look at the building. It's beautiful. It's lit up. It's glorious. And I said, "Hey, lady, nice fucking building." And she stops. She turns around. She looks at the building. She looks back at me. And she said, "My son did that." And in that moment, I felt like I was successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fire.
That's cool.
And then, you know, you know, year 2 or 3, right? We had increased maybe like 600%, which in a retail business, that's astronomical. We went from, we increased 1,000% in 6 years, right? That's unbelievable growth. One of my clients is Joetta Clark Diggs, right? Her father was Joe Clark from the movie Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was her real dad.
That's wild.
Yeah. She's a 4-time Olympic athlete.
Yeah.
So I met her through doing service. I went to a local car wash for the Saucon Valley track and field team, and I donated 100% of the proceeds to the track and field team. And through that, I gained the awareness or met Joetta. Joetta brought her daughter as a client. Her name's Talitha Diggs. She's a she's an NCAA indoor and outdoor champion. She's a world champion, and she's almost guaranteed to go to the Olympics. I'm her massage therapist. So how I knew that I was successful was when I started working on Olympic athletes, world champions, PGA, NFL, MLB, right? NCAA wrestlers. Like I've worked with some of the top athletes in the world, and that's how that gets addicting, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's dope. When you have, guys that played with Tiger Woods and you're working on them and they're flying you in to give them massages, you're like, why was I so worried about what people think of me, dude?
Yeah, it's such a long stretch from your opinion on getting that started, thinking about what you thought people would care about you being a guy in the massage industry.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward, rebuilding this business, rebranding it, taking all these things that you learned, completely getting the business on track, and then now you're working at, like, you would say the highest level of massage therapy would be working with elite athletes like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, working with elite athletes and really, developing my leadership, right? The business grew as I grew, right? So I always say that the success of the organization is going to be directly predicated on the psychology of the leader. So if you want your business to grow, then you have to grow.
Yeah.
And
very true.
Yeah. And I did. I invested in leadership training. I invested in self-development. And now, I actually started my third business, which is a motivational speaking and coaching business.
When did that start?
So that started about 3 years ago. It's called Westley Morris Inspires. And, I tell my story and I give people, basic principles that they can use to change their lives and go after for whatever they want and believe in themselves that they can do more, be more, and become more than they are right now. And divorce the stories that you've been telling yourself as to why you can't, right? And murder the limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves and our potential.
What was that like to go from, it's such a large leap, and I know it's a long story in between, but what was that like for you to go from getting picked on for shit that happened to you in high school to now you're directly talking to people that might be going through a situation like that at home, or a situation like that where they just need somebody to talk to, and then for you to be able to learn all of that in that grand scheme of, because it is really just life, and everybody has, everybody's got that story in between. It's just some people's volume's a lot louder than others. So for you to take that instance, because there's plenty of people who have been in your situation that have thrown their life away. They're either dead, they're either in jail, they either decided not to do that. But for you to go from point A, which is to have those feelings in 7th grade, all the way to a point where you're now talking to children that you can potentially help, what does that feel like?
It's the ultimate therapeutic value. It's the ultimate healing, right? So many times as we're going through storms in our life, we think that it's just us, right? And we can't see 5 feet in front of our face. I realized that all the adversity that I went through throughout my entire life was to reach back and help someone else. So when you look at the problems in your life from that lens, that it's not even about you, it makes things a lot easier, and you want to tackle things head on, right? And you don't run from feelings, adversity, problems. You face them, because one day somebody's going to need help with that same situation.
When you started doing the motivational speaking, what was that like for you to reach out to a school, or did somebody at some point tell you, hey, you should tell your story? Or like, Did you kind of start looking into contacting schools, or like how did that even start turning into a thing that you do?
Yeah, I mean, it really happened organically. So, I mean, I didn't know that I had an inspiring story. On some days I still don't. It's just my life.
Yeah.
Right. And then, people started saying, well, you're a really good speaker. You bring that intensity, that emotion. You paint pictures for people very well. Your vocabulary is extensive. And I just started getting asked to speak. Prison systems, juvenile detention centers, schools, addiction facilities, things of that nature. And it just evolved from there, and then I realized, okay, wow, you can make a business out of this. I was unaware. And as soon as I realized that, I was like,
isn't it crazy to go through that? Because I mean, we talked about it a little bit when you first got here, and we were just like talking about what I do and how I built it, and like I have no fucking clue. I had no clue what I was doing at all. And I just kept doing it, and then like it just naturally progressed to the point of everybody who started coming on the show started turning into a client, in the sense of like everybody needed help. So it's like I bring in small business, and then if they're like, hey, I need this, this, and this, and then you just start doing shit. And then it's usually like if you're just like, you'll be in a moment of something and you're just like, oh, this is now another business.
Right. Yeah. And I think, knowing how stops us from living the life of our dreams.
Yeah.
We take a look at our goals. We take a look at our vision. We take a look at the life that we want to live. And we look at all the reasons why it won't work, or how am I going to do that? And that's what stops us.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of people that say that shit to you too.
It's called your reasoning.
Yeah.
And it robs you.
Every day.
Robs you. How am I going to build a business while riding a bicycle? Get up, get on the bicycle, and keep pushing.
I think that's what was appealing to me, and I'm sure it's probably with you as well, is when, like I quit drinking, was dating a heroin addict, and was living above a bar. And that's how I started this business. So it's like for me, it's like it became a game where it's like, all right, well, how much more can I do that people are going to say that I can't? Or, and once again, people weren't saying that. It's what I was thinking about myself. So it's like when you get in these situations of like wild circumstances, it was almost addicting to me to prove people wrong, but I was proving myself wrong by, like, oh, hey, you can't do that, or well, watch me. And then it became this thing where it's like, this loud action is what drove me to constantly keep moving the bar of success. It's really weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there a question on that?
I was just saying the sense of like, where you were going back to the point of saying, I think I got lost in the comment, but like you were saying about how you were doing stuff that you were telling yourself that you couldn't do.
Right. Yeah. And based on my belief system. So yeah. Okay. We look at our potential, and then we look at our current results, and then we determine what we think is possible based on our current circumstances. And that has, listen, Jarvik didn't know how to create the artificial heart. The Wright brothers didn't know how they were going to enter into flight, right? The astronauts did not know how it was going to be on the moon or how they were going to get there. They just believed that it was possible.
Like I know people who have stopped their lives because they lost their license for, what's like the first offense? It's like 3 months.
Yeah.
And then you got to do like ARD and all that. But I know people that like literally in those 3 months, that was like, for 3 months, you had to listen to them be like, my life is over.
I've been there.
So you know what I mean? Like, so like I've worked with guys who got a DUI, and then, I had to get this ride in, and it's every day, it's this pining thing. And it does suck to lose your license.
Listen.
I had mine taken away when I was 20, 3 months, or it was a couple weeks before I was going to turn 21. I got an underage. But like, that's kind of what I was driving my point towards, is like, for you to not have a license and to continue to like upward, and it was a long time, but I mean, you had every excuse just to fold it in because you didn't have a license. Where like some people will let a daily thing completely stop them on their journey, where it's like you had every reason to not do anything because of your circumstances. There's a lot of people I knew who gave up on life for 3 months, let alone how long did you not have a license for?
22 years.
Yeah. That's so for you to like
2 decades.
Yeah, I mean, all the shit that you've done with not having a license, then, choosing not to finally stop driving and to ride a bicycle and to get around and to still be doing all the shit you're doing and ride a bike. It's like, sometimes I don't know what it is about wanting to overcome something so big because you're proving something to yourself, but like you had every reason not to do any of this.
Well, it depends on what you focus on. If I would have focused on all the restrictions of not having a license, I probably wouldn't have did shit.
So do you think it is because you choose such a wild thing when you're you kind of like put yourself in a down position that like that distraction of like, all right, well, I want to rebrand and rebuild this massage therapy thing instead of focusing on all of the hardships going on that will really climb you out of some shitty situations.
What you focus on expands, bro.
Yeah.
If I'm looking for all the reasons why it won't work, I'll fucking find them.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking for all the reasons why it will work, I'll find those too.
Yeah.
So it's what you focus on. I could focus on the fact that I'm an ex-junkie, right? That lost his license for 22 years, and then I could replay that victim mentality over and over and over again. That's easy to do.
A lot of people do that.
Of course, it's the easy way out, right? But if you focus on the fact that you're alive, that you have breath in your lungs, that you have we live in America, for God's sakes. Right? You have every opportunity to live any life that you want.
Yeah.
And we play this victim mentality of why I can't do it, right? And listen, it's valid. It's valid. It's easy, but it's not true.
Yeah.
It's horse shit.
Yeah. No, I believe that a lot with a lot of things that go on. I don't know. I think sometimes going after, like for me, I always wanted to tackle. I remember one time I was doing something, and somebody said, "Man, that's a lot. You think that you're gonna accomplish," and we're kind of like, putting me in check for an unrealistic goal. And I said, if I go all the way out here, and I only get halfway, I'm way past where I am now.
Yeah.
And even if I don't accomplish what I'm trying to get to, what I will learn and how far I will go will be further than me sitting around talking about how I grew up and fucking staying a drunk and sitting in a bar stool and waiting for the next person to sit next to me to bitch about my story. And I've sat next to those people.
Yeah.
It's a fucking record on repeat. So it's like, sometimes you need to dump that shoebox out and, hey, fuck it, I'm moving into this halfway house with Frank and I'm going to start my life over again.
I got no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, and sometimes how I look at like where to go, because you get to a point of success and you get to a point of things where they're comfortable, and sometimes it's hard because you're not going after things anymore, you're maintaining and whatnot. And then like I look at things now where I'm like, all right, well, what's going to shake this up in a very positive manner? And what's going to take me to a point where I want to get to a new level? And it's like, all right, well, this is scary over here. All right, but if I do that, then we got to leave the studio. I don't want to leave this studio, but I know I have to. Mm-hmm. Every time we move the studio, the show has grown in massive leaps and bounds. And the show has been here for 5 years. And this is a really cool spot, and it'll never be recreated the same way again. And it's going to be super emotional to leave here, to the point where sometimes I will text my landlord about keeping it, but I know I shouldn't keep it. This was for a time and a place, and it grew to where I'm at, but we need to move on, and we need to grow into things that I haven't been afraid to do shit in a while. I'm scared shitless of 2023,
Good.
and I love it.
Good.
I'm opening a restaurant. I'm building a TV production studio.
Yeah.
And these are things that came out of me doing this.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I said, it's just, if you have a full shoebox filled with shit, whether it's good or bad, and you dump it out, you can choose what comes with you when you fill it back up. And it's like, I think sometimes you need to go after massive goals, and that's hard to do when you've accomplished massive goals. It's just I like that you are now going and talking to schools, and like, public speaking is terrifying to me. So like, to get up and then, now you're walking away from something that's a business that you're now, like, you went from being this young, impressionable kid to now you're this man who now you're making positive changes in these younger kids' lives. But it's also, you learned so much business, you're getting paid to do it.
It's crazy,
that's
bro.
Wild.
It's crazy. There's a lot there in that last statement. And it goes back to what I said before. When you're a little kid on the monkey bars, on the playground, you cannot go to the next one until you let go of the one that you're on.
That hit home when you said that, because it's the truth. And it's like, when you said that, I even had this moment where I'm like, man, like, you're holding on to a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Like, you're holding on to a lot of fears. You're holding on to a lot of, people who have died over the last couple of years. Like, you need to let go of all this shit in order to move forward. And it's weird, because it's like, when you said that, it was like, bam, 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 bam. And it was like 10 things that happened in a millisecond where I was like, you have so much to let go of in order to go to the next level. And sometimes you need to hear it from other people. It's part of the reason why I knew as soon as we started chopping shit at the event that I was like, oh, it's a killer podcast. It's I can talk to somebody in 3 seconds and know exactly where the conversations are going. I know the parallels that are going to run through it.
Yeah.
Where do you see a lot of this going now? Because you have your successful business that you rebranded, you're doing your marketing and other things, and then now you're doing the talks at schools. Like, where do you want to go with any of this?
Well, like I just said, if you want to go somewhere, you got to let go, right? If you want to go up, you got to give up. So I'm letting go of the Saucon Valley. I'm letting go of the massage business. Built it up 1,000%. Give it back, right? The purpose of a goal is not to achieve the goal. The purpose of a goal is to become the person that you need to in order to achieve the goal.
Yeah.
Right? And I've done that, right? I've done it at the highest level, right? So I'm giving it back. And then what the future looks like is I'm going to be a very, very well-known motivational speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the best in the world. And the reason I know that is because I won't stop until I will. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll get better. I'll train. I will fail forward. I'll practice the same principles that I did in other areas of my life, just in this area of my life. And I'm going to build a speaking, coaching, and mentoring program to help other people to get unstuck in life, and to dump out that shoebox, right?
Yeah.
I love the shoebox. I choose to use the analogy of a house, right? You're living in a house called your life, right? For 42 years, you've been living in this house. Who else has been living in there? Every single person that has ever come in contact with you has lived in this house. And for 42 years, they've been throwing shit in the basement. You've been throwing shit in there. Mom's been throwing shit in there. Your brother's been everybody's just throwing shit in the basement for 42 years, right? It's time to go into the basement. Take a look at some of that shit that's down there, right? Mom, this belongs to you. Brother, this belongs to you. 5th grade teacher, this belongs to you. April Johnson, who broke my heart when I was 17, this belongs to you.
Yeah.
Some of this shit
That's
is
a
mine.
great metaphor.
Some of this shit is mine, right? Some of this stuff we can throw out, and some of this stuff we can leave right here, right? But so many times I carried around a resentment with my mom for 20 years. It had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
I didn't get arrested.
Yeah.
But it felt real. And whenever you have a resentment with your dreams, with another person, it's any negative attitude towards any person, place, thing, organization, anything, you have restriction. And by holding on to resentments, by holding on to fear, we are restricting ourselves from our full potential.
Yeah, that's 100% the truth.
Yeah.
I've experienced that, like I said, with family members and stuff over the years, and just people in general. And you know, with networking, there's good and bad that comes with it. But when you hold on to that and you start letting it dictate your day, or you hear somebody's name and it starts going into a direction of a very negative energy and like just soul-sucking shit, I mean, it could destroy you as a person holding on to that stuff. I really like the house thing and the basement because it's the truth. Because, the thing with the shoebox is it makes sense, but it didn't bring up what other people put in my shoebox. And then when you said that about the basement, I was like, that's some fucking truth there. People leaving their baggage and bullshit, girls who have hurt you, like a lot of that is, it makes perfect sense as to sometimes you need to clean that shit out, whether it's yours or not. You got to make amends with people maybe that you don't want to, just to not, like, I remember when I cleared some shit up with some people and I apologized on some shit. And that was the first time I realized I was apologizing for me, not them. I don't care if you say you're sorry back. I'm apologizing to you for what I did. And then when I did that a couple times, I started realizing, like, that cleans some shit out. That'll clean some room for you to just have a little bit more breathing space. I don't expect apologies back from people because I'm apologizing for what I did to you. For what you did to me, that's on you. I don't have control over that. I'm not going to harp on that. I'm not going to hold on to that. Like, what I did, I'm sorry about. And that might have caused a reaction, but I mean, I remember I apologized to people and was like very upfront and like, hey, I'm really sorry. And they were like, yeah, I knew you would apologize. And that was the end of the conversation. And I'm like, what about what you did? And when and then when I let go of that, that's when I realized, like, man, like, it just felt good. Like, if you're expecting an apology back, that ain't going to clean anything up. But if you just kind of let it go and you're like, look, I'm sorry, I was this person and I can control that and I'm sorry about that. That's when I started making leaps and bounds on, like, really defining myself and changing myself. And I don't know, man. It's I learned a lot from talking to you in the time that we did. I knew I was going to. I really like everything that you've done from your story. I like the direction of your story. I think that this is where you should be going. And just from how you presented yourself on the show and how you carried yourself and, from watching your clips and things that you do, I think you're on the way to, I think that is where your journey should go. I think you should be doing motivational stuff. And I think that, sometimes when you let go of things that have been a part of your life and it's a family business and all that, as much as it's scary, the new part about it is that you're going to have more focus. And it's like, look at what you're doing now without 100% focus on public speaking. So It's like, if you take that time, which I noticed when I left a real job and went into this, and it's like, oh, well, you need to be focused on that 100% to be the best at doing that. So I'm excited to see your journey along the way. Anything you ever need from me, or if you ever want to come back on or just shoot the shit, this has been a great podcast, and I think it's very informational, and I think this would be the same thing every time. So the door is open, and anything that you need,
nice.
Let me know if you need anything. I'm going to give you a chance to kind of plug, because I know I had a couple friends who had reached out about you public speaking. So, like, if any, just your general information on how to get a hold of you for the businesses that you do.
100%. And I appreciate you as well. One of the things that I didn't mention, shout out to California Love here on TikTok. I'm coming out with a book. It should be out in about 6 months.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be an author. So the book is in the process. And then anybody that wants to reach out to me or find me, they can go to my name, WesleyMorris.com. That's Wesley with a T. So WesleyMorris.com with Wham Inspires. And I'll just shoot my, you can text me at 610-554-5533, or you can reach out to my assistant, Daria, at 610-554-0084.
Cool. I'll definitely have you back on when you get the book and stuff and it's in your hand and you want to push it. We can run this back and just go over the whole book too. So that'll be helpful for you as well.
Dope, bro.
First time listener, first time watcher, first time anything. It's neveragainstudio.com. That has everything I'm doing on there. That has the podcast. It has the video and the audio. You can watch it directly there. Subscribe to the YouTube. The YouTube has all of the podcasts on it and more. We started putting music up on there. iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff as well. well. And if you go to my Instagram and follow me at Never Again Studio, that is the heart of what I do. I do everything off of Instagram. I'm not really on Facebook. It just kind of reposts on there. So if you need to get a hold of me, Instagram is the way to do it. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
No
I
doubt.
always enjoy the morning podcast, and this is one for the books. So we'll run this back when you got your book finished, man.
Outstanding. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man.
Yep.
Never Again Radio. Get into it, brother.